Tell us a little bit about what does a typical humanitarian aid project for CSI entail?
So we are mainly active in countries where Christians or other religious minorities are persecuted. So what means persecution? It means, it's a big word. And persecution, it means discrimination in the daily life. It means isolation from a community. It means displacement. It means violation of basic rights. So it's a big picture persecution of religious minorities. We work together with local partners on the ground, which is very important because they know the situation, they know what the needs are, what the problems are, and we work very, very close with the local partners. And they come up with a problem, with a situation, they bring it up, they discuss it with us, with the project managers who are in the office of Christian Solidarity International. Then usually we make a fact-finding trip to see with the local partner what is the situation about, what is the problem, how can we help, what help is best or good for the people who are in this situation of persecution. And if together with the project partner we feel that's really important to do something, the project partner comes up with a financial report, with a narrative report, presenting the project with what are the activities, the planned activities, what are the planned outcomes, what are the goals that we want to achieve. And if the management agrees, approves the project, then the local partner can start working with the beneficiaries, with the victims on the ground to implement the project and really adapt it to the need on the ground.
I believe this mission of CSI has evolved quite a lot in the last almost 5 decades of work. So currently, how many countries are we present with humanitarian projects?
We are currently present in 15 countries, and of course the persecution of Christians and religious minorities is going on, unfortunately, in many more countries, but being a small organization, we cannot be everywhere, so we concentrate on 15 countries where persecution is really very severe.
Well, speaking of very severe persecution, Franco, maybe we could address the current situation in Sudan. Maybe you could tell us a little bit, Franco, about the situation in the Nuba Mountains. What are we doing there? How severe is the situation on the ground?
For sure. Let me just go back a little bit. Most of the people in Nuba Mountain are displaced. We are talking about 2 million people, and there is about 15 ID camp. What we are doing there now, as the Christian Solidarity International, we are just addressing the food issue. There is a lot of hunger and the food shortage. So our main focus in Nuba Mountain today is emergency food aid.
And exactly as Franco said, there are 2 million IDPs, internally displaced people, who are arriving with nothing. And the big problem that we also see in the Nuba Mountain is that the big NGOs have withdrawn. One cause is the cutting of funds from the US aid and other big organizations. And the other problem is also the security, the safety, that a lot of existing NGOs in the Nuba Mountains have left. And leaves behind these displaced people, but also the host community, the local people from the Nuba Mountains who are now there, who have to deal with this huge amount of people coming in every day seeking safety and with nothing. And this is a big problem that we observe, where we want, with the little we have, we want to address bringing food, as Franco said, to the displaced people, but also the host community who is really suffering hunger.
Can I add something a little bit? Because we were there in February this year, and we witnessed that when we arrived, we were seeing some of the IDP just arriving. And what we witnessed in most of the camps, you will find one of the camps having 200,000 households in the camp. And some of them, they don't even have a shelter where they can just sit under the tree with a little thing that they own. So you can just imagine if these people are suffering now, and what is going to happen, the rainy season is going to start in May. And these little people, even if they can farm, the nearest time that they can get the food, it will be in September or in October. So from now on until that time, the hunger is going to be severe and they need help.
Yes.
And also one thing that we observed and that touched me personally very much is that I would say 80% of the displaced people are women and children, highly traumatized. We don't know what they faced, what they experienced also on their way. Probably a lot of violence, of abuse, and you see it in their eyes. They are torn apart from their families. A lot of children who lost their families, who are orphaned or maybe just lost their parents. And I think under this trauma, it's very difficult for these people to move or to have a goal, or they are like paralyzed. And even to find food, to go out to the bushes to find food, it becomes very difficult because they have nothing. And to bring a little help brings them hope, means for them we are not forgotten. And there is something, there is the world who knows we exist.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, that region of the world also suffers with a terrible, terrible situation of slavery, right? To this day, 21st century, we're still seeing this. And CSI is very well known for a slave liberation program in Sudan that I think last year celebrated 30 years. Could you tell us a little bit more about that program?
For sure, this issue of slavery in Sudan started in 1983 and lasts until 2005. So you can see it's more than 20 years that the slavery has been going on. And what happened was that during the second civil war in Sudan, the Sudanese government, they can deny that, but it was a system in Khartoum that armed two Arab tribes called Masiri and the Zekat. And they are boarding the South Sudan and encourage them to come to South Sudan to abduct the children and women and young men and destroy the houses and loot some of the property that these people have. So that situation started in 1983, and nobody was even talking about it because the Sudanese government was really working very hard to hide so that nobody in the world can know that, until CSI came to South Sudan and they noticed that this is something that had been going on and it is terrible and they have to do something. And CSI start the program of freeing the slaves and to come back to South Sudan. It was not an easy thing. The CSI, like what we just mentioned, always work in collaboration with the local community to help, because CSI cannot do it alone without the cooperation with the local community. So there are partnerships, there are community leaders, and there are women and the churches locally who help CSI to identify the slaves when they come back and bring them back to the freedom. In 1995, I believe the UNICEF acknowledged that there is a slavery in Sudan. And immediately they just pull out because the Sudanese government threatened them that if they continue to do that, they will kick them out from the country. So it's CSI alone who is left to be doing this job. As I mentioned, this is started in 1983 and lasts in 2005. So there were 100,000 of people who had been abducted. And now today there is a peace, there is no abduction going on. But all these people who had been abducted a long time ago are still in slavery, and CSI is working to bring them back. We should also make it clear so that people should know. Why do we call it as a slavery? Because these people were abducted in their home against their will. They were taken to North Sudan. They were forced to convert to Islam. They were forced for the labor work without a payment. They were abused. Some of them were beaten. Some of them, their feet were cut so that they cannot run away. And that is the definition of the slavery. And it is a worst thing that to me as a person, because I'm from South Sudan, I'm from the area where people were abducted. Some of my relatives were been abducted until now. We didn't find them. To me, I think that slavery is one of the worst things you can do to the human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Violates everything that is most fundamental, for sure. So Franco, how many people have been liberated in this program?
Until last year, we managed to liberate about 160,000 people. But we are still continues to bring back, as I mentioned, that there is no abduction going on, but we still have thousands of people still in slavery, and we are working on that. So that number is going to increase, is going to go up.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Hassan, unfortunately, we have also seen recently a lot of atrocities being committed in Nigeria. So would you please tell us a little bit more about the current situation in Nigeria, in particular the Middle Belt?
Yes. Well, Nigeria, I think there are three elements, which are also three regionals in the crisis in Nigeria. So in the northeast, you have the terrorist group Boko Haram, who have openly declared their intention for only Sharia law, and they're anti-Christian. Then in the northwest, you have the fight between the Fulani and the Hausa. They're all Muslims, attacking each other over the resources that are there. But predominantly is the Middle Belt region of the country, where we've been having strategic, coordinated attack in Christian communities and Christian villages. More than 300 villages have been sacked and taken over. And you have, of course, almost every year in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years or more than 5,000 to 6,000 people have been killed. And the killings are still going on. So the lining, or rather the common factor, denominator among all this, either it's northeast, central Nigeria, or even northwest, is the vulnerable Christian communities that continue to take the brunt of all the killings and the massacres and the kidnappings and so many things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the way that the media is covering this event? Because sometimes we see that this is just an economic struggle. Is that really the case of what's going on there?
No, I think far from it. So what the challenge there with the media is they always want an immediate and a quick reporting for the public. And that also removes, therefore, the focus on the real issues and elements. But you also have the international organizations also who will not want to say anything that is religious. So again, either the media or organizations, even the United Nations and many other NGO and non-governmental organizations that are working there, will rather blame it on climate change and fight for economic resources. But it's much more than that, because the killings have been going on for nearly 20 years. And in those 20 years, the local communities have been dismissed, so you don't have data available for proper assessment. And because that's not available, the whole thing is dismissed as, oh, well, it's just fight for economic resources, unfortunately. But the statistics that have shown the death of Christians, arguably, depending on who you're talking to, between 60 to 100,000 last year alone, goes back to how much more, how many people have been killed from, let's say, 2010, when Boko Haram came into the scene. Unfortunately, like I said, people want data. It's not been available because at that time, nobody knew we were going to get this far, 10 years, actually 15 years without solving the problem.
Mm-hmm. And besides that, we do see attacks on churches during important dates like Easter, for example, that just happened, right?
Yes. So that is why we are saying it is focused particularly against Christians, and it's coordinated and well organized, because in the last 10 years, there are close to about 3,000 churches that have been completely destroyed. And every year from 2010, Christmas, Easter, and any Christian holiday, that is when you get the most vulnerable people in churches. So kidnappings, abduction, and of course, rape. So many people, till today have not been accounted for. And if you check online, there are many pastors too that have been kidnapped that still have not been released.
Mm. In the face of all this conflict, what are CSI's humanitarian projects on the ground in Nigeria?
I think CSI has done amazingly well. I would argue probably the only organization in central Nigeria that has been able to do the advocacy, bringing international attention and trying to, silence all the noise about climate change and fight for economic resources, to focus on the key issues. Because the problem is 10 years, okay, they said it's climate change. So the solution for climate change has not stopped the killings. Even last week, people were killed. But CSI is bringing the element to the ideology that's driving this, to get the international community to say, if you solve this problem, we probably now will begin to stop the killings. So in the advocacy, but of course there's the emergencies of bringing immediate help to support families that are displaced, emergency food, mosquito nets, mats, everything. When you have close to about 2 million that have been displaced over time, you know that there's a lot of humanitarian need there. But importantly is to help those communities rebuild and strengthen themselves, because that's also what the attackers are trying to do, weaken the Christian communities. And like it's happened in so many places, so that they are not able to rebuild. They are not able to come back to those villages. So CSI is working with the local partners and communities to give them that economic empowerment, because in that you restore both their faith, their strength, their hope for the future, and of course, above all, their dignity as human beings.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Maria, moving to a region where Christianity started, the Middle East, today we have a significant minority of Christians there facing severe problems as well. What are CSI's projects on the ground on that broader region?
So exactly, you just said, it's the cradle of Christianity, and what we see is that the number of Christians is just going down and down and down, and few Christians are left in the Middle East. And again, what we as organization are trying to do is to empower the people who left, who stayed, the Christians who had the courage or maybe not the possibilities to leave their countries, to leave behind the conflict, and to encourage them through empowerment. And that's the case in Syria, that's the case in Iraq. We, at the beginning, I said we not only help Christians, but also other persecuted religious minorities, like the case in Iraq, where the Yazidi community, the Yazidi religion, it's a highly persecuted religious minority who suffered a huge persecution during the time of the ISIS, and people who lost everything. Their villages have been destroyed, a lot of people killed, women raped, and they are now, some of them coming back, and they find their houses destroyed and they have nothing. So what we do is that with our local partner, we have built a legal center which helps these Yazidi people to fight for their rights. For example, they have a land, they have a house, but they have no documents that the house belongs to them, because maybe the documents has been burned or destroyed or under the rubble of the houses. So they are afraid and they don't know how to move. So through this legal help, they know what their rights are. They know how they can remake or re-get their ID card. They are helped to rehave their house certificate that the house belongs to them. And this is very important, again, to empower the local people. That's now an example for the Yazidi community, but we do a lot of empowerment livelihood projects in Syria for Christians, in Iraq, in Egypt, in other countries.
Yeah, so it's wonderful to see that CSI is working with local communities beyond even just Christian communities, just those that are persecuted, right, to advocate for their human rights, essentially, and dignity. Franco, speaking of these local communities, there's always a risk of creating too much dependency on aid, from the beneficiaries of these programs. How do we address this risk, and how do we empower these local communities?
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, the CSI work in those areas. We go there because there is immediate displacement and there is economic shock. Those people chase away from their home, they run to the safe area, and they are there, they need food, they need immediate support. And that is one of the things that the CSI is addressing. It helped them to stable, and we have seen this in case of South Sudan. It was CSI, when it was on the ground, doing some humanitarian work, it helped some community to stable until their case was resolved. we in ourselves also as a Christian Solidarity, we have in our mind some of the projects we do, like sustainable projects. We have done one in South Sudan where we empower the widow to start a small business, and it is working very well now. The same thing in Nigeria. We go to the camp, and then after a few years, we talk to them and we said we need to select some of the women or the widow who are victim to do something like a micro loan business, like the farming. That if you have the land and you can farm, CSI can donate the money for tool and seed, and you can start farming. So we are creating small sustainable projects, especially empowering the women, because majority of the people who are very vulnerable in those camps are women and children, and we are working on that.
That's good. Hassan, how do we empower local communities in terms of their religious freedom in these countries where they face so much persecution?
Yes, you know, the scenario in every persecuted Christian community is that these people are denied a voice completely, especially by their oppressors. So nobody speaks for them. And this is where CSI had come in a lot to be the voice, both within the local communities or local governments within the states where the persecution is happening, but also internationally, to be able to bring the focus to these people. Now, when you speak on behalf of people that are oppressed, you become the hope they have to explain what they can't even explain. Even if they want to, they do not even articulate it properly. So CSI has been doing that. And of course, with the prayer alerts we've been sending, a lot of our supporters have done wonderfully well praying for these communities, and the results are there. And then, of course, we've had the engagements with the international communities and bringing, like I said earlier on, the focus on what the real issues are and how those two can be very helpful. But above all, I would say, for the Christian community, that brings the Christian hope and faith to know that Christians all over the world are standing for them. And for speaking from experience from Nigeria, I would say people see God himself, you know, through the people that put their hands together, you know, to just speak out for them. And that has been very powerful in bringing that hope, you know, and faith in Christ.
Yeah. So many countries, so many communities that are facing persecution. It is very difficult, but how do we choose who to help? Well, what is the criteria?
Yeah, so indeed, it's actually very frustrating often to see that we cannot be everywhere. We wished we could do much more, but yeah, that's indeed frustrating. But again, we are working with local partners, and these local partners, we trust them much. And as we also visit the countries and know the situation ourselves, we also see who are the most vulnerable or the most persecuted people. And a big criteria for Christian Solidarity International is to free the captives. So captivity means people who live under slavery, bonded labor, in jail. So these are often the first victims that we feel they need our help. Then the most vulnerable, be it the women, children, orphans, sick people. So like this, we try to focus, or within all the people that need help, to focus on those who, among all of them, are even in a worse situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's freedom even above freedom of religion, and then this Christian teaching of bring me the little ones and those that suffer the most.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Franco, on the ground, what are the biggest challenges that our team faces?
Well, there is security risk. That is number one. We cannot deny that, but we accept that as a CSI staff, that is a part of our job. We go to the area where there is war, where there is violence and abduction, and we accept that, and that is the challenge we are going through it. So I have seen this happen to CSI in South Sudan when they started slave liberation, and the Sudanese government was not happy with CSI. CSI compound was bombed. And luckily we were not there. So that was an example. In Nigeria, I think it was last year, one of our partners was abducted and killed in Maiduguri. And that is the nature of our work. We are seeing that. In some places like in Nuba Mountains, it's extremely difficult to get into those areas during the rainy season because the roads are very thin and muddy roads. And when there is the rains, the car cannot go. And that also is creating a problem to us to deliver the aids to the people on time. In addition to that, also some of the areas like in Nuba Mountains, there is no communication, no telephone, no internet. And sometimes if we need some report, we cannot get it. Or if we need to talk to them to find out what is happening, we cannot get this thing. So most of the areas CSI is working, especially in Africa, there is a violence, and that is what we are facing.
Mm-hmm. So very dangerous work, and I believe many aid agencies also have left, and there's only Christian solidarity.
Correct. It's like what Maria just mentioned. When President Trump cut the aid for USAID, most of the NGOs, especially Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile, they left. And we have 2 million people in the camp, and they don't have food. And we are trying. That is the way we can put it, because you're talking about 2 million people. But I think it's a very good thing for someone from the West or from the United States to be on the ground with these people. You can see their face when they see us going there. Mm-hmm. They are not just only thinking that we are going to give food. In their mind, they think also we can keep them and hope and then solve their problem. Yes, that is, we give them a big hope.
Yes, no, that's super important.
And maybe I can also add something about challenges. So Franco just mentioned it's climatic challenges, which makes the sometimes very remote areas where we work very difficult to reach. Security, and maybe also an example from India, where it's a very totalitarian state, and our project partners must be very careful. What do they say and what not? How do they appear and how not? Also for their safety, for their security, to send money and funds to certain governments. It's very difficult for us as a Christian organization that we are not allowed to send money. So we have to find ways to support the projects on the ground. Another big challenge is also the communication with our partners. When they go to remote areas, maybe they are cut off of internet connection. They cannot call us. The reporting becomes difficult. They need to find ways to be in touch with us. So our local partners are really heroes. They do a wonderful work in very challenging circumstances. They implement the work with and for CSI and really need our prayers.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of prayers, Hassan, how does the public help all this work that CSI does on the ground?
Yeah. Let me give you a quick example. In one of the displaced people's camps I've been, and there was food that was brought to help. And one of the women said to me that she thanks God that she has this food, because a lot of the young girls and the women had to go out and prostitute in the night to get some food to come and feed their children. That's how bad it could be in some of these camps. So when our supporters help, they are not just giving food or rice or corn or whatever, you're also helping restore their dignity. You're letting their children see that their parents are doing something in their situation, because some of them have been in these camps for 15 years. Children are not going to school. You know, the health is a big problem. So in addition to all the prayers that we would always want our partners to stand with these persecuted Christians in all these regions, is to do whatever you can. There's no financial support or funds that is too small, and there is none that is too big, because a little money in a camp feeds 10, 20 families, provides medication in certain instances, like in Sudan or South Sudan. So yeah, we always want our partners to know that the little you give is not just that you're sending a mat or a mosquito net or anything. To the persons on the ground, it's much more than that. But above all, it brings hope. They know that they can stand in God, they can stand in Christ. They will not have to convert to any other religion so that they'll be safe. No, they know that they trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. But above all, I think it's a picture for the entire Christian community worldwide, Like the Bible will say, when one suffers, all of us suffer. So for us as Christians, it's also our Christian responsibility to see that we're able to reach out, because this is who we are as Christians. Yeah,
absolutely.
And maybe I can just add something, like to bring hope, but we mentioned it before, to bring human dignity back to these people, like building a latrine in the camp so that the women, the children, the men can go to a clean toilet. It seems like nothing, but it has to do with dignity. Children in Pakistan who work in brick kilns and have nothing than mud on their hands, they never see a school from inside, and to free them, to give them clean clothes, to give them the possibility to go to school, it's to give them back the dignity. When you give freedom to a person, it means you give them back their dignity. And I think this is a very important cause for CSI International, Christian Solidarity International, to give dignity to the human being.
Well, it's the project we started. What happened is, because as I mentioned, these people, when they are in slavery, many things are not happening. They are denied to their belief, they are denied the payment for the work they are doing, they are denied the clothes, they are denied when they are sick not to go to the doctors, to the hospital. It's only when they come to us, we have a fund that we buy a used clothes, and that is what we distribute to some of them when they come. You can see the smile that I have to own something, is mine now and I am free. Nobody is going to beat me or going and call me in a bad name. It's not only the clothes we are giving them, it's she-goats. And that is another thing that you can see there. When they receive the goat, someone will be jumping up like as if you gave them like $1 million. So these are small things that can restore the hope, and they feel that they are accepted and they are human beings like us.
Yeah, also in the name of Christian Solidarity International, we want to thank to all the people who are with us and who pray. First of all, who pray for the persecuted Christians, who pray for us, for our work, but of course also all the people who donate, who give money so that this incredibly important work can be done. And in the name of the organization, I want to thank for all the people of goodwill who are part of our organization and who make all of this possible.